Okay, so let's start. I'm going to start showing you how you might go about doing this. Okay, so the assignment. I'm going to go up to the top of the assignment. Alright, design genealogy chart. So you're going to create a new 8.5 by 11 document. Name it your last name followed by your first initial -EX2. So I'm going to go File, New, or Command N, Create New. And I'm going to choose Print again for the preset. Letter size. And then just choose for, I'm going to choose inches. And I'm going to name this my last name followed by my first initial -EX2. So for this week, you just turn in the Illustrator file. There's no extra credit for this week. So orientation, remember the rules. If you choose portrait, there are different rules than if you choose landscape. I'm going to go ahead and choose landscape and do 2 sets of parents and 3 generations. And then I'm just going to leave all the defaults as is and click create. Then I'm going to just go file and save because it's not saved yet until I do that, and I don't want to wait till the end to save. So this is going to go to my, let's see, folder for this class. And I'm saving it as an Illustrator format file, .ai, click save. And I'm just going to say OK there. And I'm going to start by making some simple shapes. I'm going to use my shape tools again here. So if you want, you can click and hold and go to the tear off so you have access to all of your little shapes from your floating shape panel. And I'll start with the ellipse tool. And I'm going to hold down shift to make a perfect circle. And then you think about the characteristics that you give each of your parent shapes. So I want it to be yellow, maybe. So while my shape is selected, I'll have access to color, to the fill color, the stroke color from the appearance section of the properties. So I'll just choose a simple CMYK yellow. Maybe I'll increase the weight of the stroke, so I can do that just from the stroke weight option in properties. Maybe just for fun, I'll put on an effect. So I'm going to use my selection tool to make sure my object is selected, and then I'm going to go to the effect drop down and choose, I like in the stylized category, I'm going to choose a drop shadow. And then I can make adjustments to the opacity of the drop shadow, the offset, how far away the drop shadow is from the object. Maybe I'll do point, and you can type in numerically. Let's say I want it 0.08 there, and then I'll type 0.08 here, and then press tab to apply that. And then the blur, maybe I want, see, I can adjust the blur with the arrows, or I can, see, that's no blur. I can type in something to make less blur. Let me press tab, see if that, let's do maybe 09. And then I'll press tab to see it apply. Well, no, maybe 05. Press tab. Okay. So you can make those adjustments. You can change the color too. Just do. And then just say OK. And so I've created my drop shadow. Now, a drop shadow is an effect. So if I wanted to change the drop shadow later, does anyone know where I need to go to do that? If I change my mind about the drop shadow, if I want to delete it, if I want to alter it, well, the quickest way is you select your object, and then you'll see in the appearance section, you'll see there's the drop shadow that I just added, and then there's a little trash icon to delete the effect. I could also turn oh no, actually that doesn't turn it off. That just lets me choose other effects from this FX button, but if I wanted my complete appearance panel to have more options, there's a little dot 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 button here I could click on, and then I have the whole appearance panel pop out. You can also, of course, get the appearance panel under window in alphabetical order. It's the appearance panel that the appearance panel is the place to go if you wanted to change the effect or alter the effect, which you can get it from the little section in properties here, or you can get it from within the appearance panel. So I can click on the drop shadow if I wanted to just alter the drop shadow. I can click there. Maybe I want to change the color, so I could go to color and then choose like a lighter color, maybe a blue. Click OK. So now I just gave it a blue. And then I could say okay, or I could turn off the visibility by clicking the eyeball in appearance just to see it without, before and after. And I could always highlight the drop shadow and click the trash here or here if I wanted to remove it, or drag it to the trash, whatever, however you like. But I'm gonna hit Command Z to undo because I'll keep the drop shadow. Okay, so the next parent. Okay, this time I want to make a triangle. So how do we make a triangle? Did I talk about that already? We don't have a triangle shape, so what do? Well, we can click on the polygon tool or the star tool, and instead of drawing out a polygon like this by dragging, I'm going to delete that, I can simply click one time, and then I could put a number of sides. So how many sides do I need? 3, right? 3 sides to make a triangle. So there we go. So I've got my triangle there. Maybe I want to make it look more, have more of a different look than my circle. They shouldn't look like brother and sister to start with, right? So I'm gonna just swap the fill and the stroke by clicking the swap button here. Oops, yeah. And then maybe I'll change the color of the stroke by clicking it to the front. I've got my little swatches menu here, and maybe I want an orange stroke. And then I'll shrink this down. I'm going to hold shift to constrain the proportions. Maybe I want the stroke to be a little bit thicker, so I'll just adjust it thicker. I could also experiment with the stroke with aligning it differently. So there's a little fly out, like if you click on the word stroke under appearance, it'll fly out the whole stroke panel, which you can always get under window in alphabetical order as well. So if I want to bring up the stroke panel, I can go under window and bring up the stroke panel, but it comes up as a minimized panel. So if I want all the options, I can click the little options button, show options, and have all the options. So in the stroke panel, I could play with things like rounding the corners. So there's with rounded corners. Or maybe I'll go back to sharp corners. Or I could I could change the alignment of the stroke to aligning inside or aligning outside. I could also choose dashed line and then play with the dashed line. So now it's got this thick 12-point dash. Maybe I want to choose a size for the gap, a different size for the gap, maybe a 2-point gap. And then maybe I want a dash that's another length, like a 5-point dash here, and then maybe a 1-point gap here. And before you know it, you're creating a new kind of little design for your stroke. Maybe a 7-point dash. No, that's too much. Maybe a 3-point dash and a 5-point gap. So you can keep playing with the lengths of things. Maybe this dash is too long. Maybe 8 points for the beginning. And then you get, depending on what lengths you choose here, you're going to get interesting or different kind of patterning in the strokes. You can also choose, let's see, this one's not doing anything for me here. Okay, so, and you don't have to fill in all of these. I just did to just see what was going to happen. let me try seeing if I align that on the center again. Oh, that's inside. That's kind of cool with the dashes against the black, or aligning. That kind of works better. Aligning back to the center like that. Okay, try that. Okay, so now I've given some characteristics to my objects here, my two parents. And now I'm going to move on and do the other parents over here. So with these parents, I'm going to go with, let's see, I'm going to do an ellipse. Draw out an ellipse, and it's taking on the characteristics of my last shape. So maybe I don't want dashes on this one, so I'll uncheck dashes on this one. And maybe what I want is I'm gonna try the stroke on the inside on this one. And then I want to have a gradient. So how do I do gradient? I go into gradient mode. So I click on gradient, the gradient mode button for the fill. And then I'm going to bring up my gradient panel, which is right here. But if you can't find it, you can find it under window in alphabetical order. There it is. And I'm gonna drag some color in. I could drag color in from swatches. Just drag and drop some colors in that I might want to use. Or I could double click on my fill and choose my own color. But then that makes it solid, so that color I'll just drag into the gradient slider to add to it. And maybe there's a color I don't want, so I can select it and throw it out. And then I can choose what kind of gradient do I want this to be. It's linear right now, maybe I want radial. And then I can switch to my gradient tool and redraw my gradient on one end or another. One thing that I like to do with elliptical shapes and radial gradients is I like to use my gradient tool to alter the shape to be elliptical. So you can, to alter the gradient to be elliptical. So see the black circle? I can drag down on that and make that an ellipse. I can, on the black and white circle, I can drag that out. I can rotate this around how I want it and move the whole gradient over and just adjust it and adjust these color stops to blend how I want it to blend, and drag on the diamonds to change the blending there between color stops. Oh, take a look. Okay, I kind of like that. Okay, and then finally for the partner for this one, I'm going to do the star tool and click once and make a 4-point star and click OK. And I'm going to scale this star up a little bit here, rotate it. I'm going to hold shift to rotate at a perfect 45-degree angle. The stroke on this one, I'm going to go back to my stroke panel. My stroke panel here. I'm going to make the stroke back to align center on the path. And this time I want to put, what I could do is I could put on the stroke, I could put a gradient on the stroke, so I could while I have the stroke in front, I can swap that to be gradient and maybe change the colors in this gradient a little bit. Throw some colors out and swap the colors around here. And then I can experiment with from the gradient panel. While you can't use the gradient tool in the stroke, you can experiment with different gradient options for stroke, like apply gradient along stroke or apply gradient across stroke. Actually, maybe what I prefer to do is put the gradient on this stroke instead. So I'm going to try that. So this one, I'm going to click the gradient slider, and it's going to apply to this stroke. And then it looks like the circular one doesn't give me these other options, but that's okay. I'll go with this. This is kind of cool. And then this one's kind of cool, but I want to outline the stroke. I want to give you the option to outline your stroke. So it is 7:30, so you don't have to be here, but I'm going to just continue the lesson for a little, and then maybe take a break, a 10-minute break, and then continue.
So is it okay if I leave now?
Yeah, you can leave whenever you'd like. You're not forced to stay here.
Alright, I'm gonna leave, but I'm gonna check this video out tomorrow so I can see what I missed.
Yeah, so just make a note of where you left off so you can skip to this point.
Alright.
Okay, have a good night. Okay, at this point, I want to try to outline the stroke into its own shape. I think with a gradient, that'll make things a little too complicated. So let me just try it, and then I'll undo it if I don't want to do it. If it won't work out the way I want it. But I do recommend on at least one of your shapes that you try to outline your stroke, because that's going to give you more options. But I'm just going to check how that's going to turn out with a gradient stroke. So while I have this object selected, I'm going to go Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. Let's see what happens. Ooh, that turned the gradient into a ton of individualized little shapes with tons of anchor points. So I think that's going to be too complicated. So I'm going to undo that, Command Z, and just make this a solid. I'll make it orange again, or some other color. Let's see, magenta. We'll go with something different. And I'm going to try this again. So right now, and let me change the gradient on this shape to be something different than this gradient. So I'm gonna, because you can make your opposites can attract, so you can make the partners very different. So I'm gonna go back to the fill on this, and maybe I want some more orange colors, so I'll throw in some orange colors. Orange and blue, and maybe swap this blue around. Okay, I think that's cool. That's different enough. And then I can take my gradient tool and I could redraw this gradient like that. I can move this around kind of like that. Or another gradient option that you can play with is the freeform gradient. That's a new one. But that one's not gonna probably use the gradient slider that I have here. So as soon as I click on the third option, I haven't shown you this yet, if I click on freeform gradient, then it's gonna convert it to a whole different format. So with freeform gradient, it lets you kind of have a little more control in where you place little spots of color. So I can select a color stop, and I think I can double click here on the fill and choose a different color here. Let's see what happens. And then that new color went into this one. You can hover over and drag this circle to pull the color out further. And I can click to add a color stop. Let's see what happens if I click on a swatch color here. Yeah, so you can also click right on swatch colors to add to selected color stops right in the shape, which is pretty cool. And you could probably select a color stop and press delete, to delete it, or click to add another one. So you can choose a green there, and this is purple, Maybe I want a blue here. Choose a blue there. Maybe this one should also be like a dark blue. So this is a rainbow, splotchy looking freeform gradient is another way to work that you could try. Okay, so that's with freeform gradient. Okay, so now I'm going to select this shape, and all this is, if you look in the layers, we're working on one layer here. I'm going to make my layer panel options large so you can see hopefully a little bit better, and I'm zooming in. You probably can't see me zoom in now in Zoom, ironically, but later in the recorded video you can see when I zoom in. So this is all just one single path. It's a star-shaped path. That's what it's listed as in the sublayers. I flipped open layer 1 to reveal the shapes that I have so far, and this is listed as a single path. And it has a freeform gradient fill with a magenta stroke. What I recommend is that you outline your stroke into its own shape. This is what happens when you do that. You can select your path, your object, and you go object, path, and then outline stroke, and it it got rid of my freeform gradient. That's a problem. Interesting. Let me undo that, Command Z. Okay, so I guess it doesn't like freeform gradient if you outline your stroke. So I guess I'm gonna have to go back to my original gradient. So I'm gonna go back. I can go back to it by clicking on the gradient option in the middle of my 3 modes here at the bottom of the toolbar. So I'll go with that one. Maybe I'll take my gradient tool and move it over to one side like that. That's cool. Okay, now let's try this again. So I'm going to select my shape and I'm going to go object, path, and then outline stroke. There. It retains the other 2 types of gradients, the radial and the linear. But at least you know that that's what happens with freeform gradients. Not quite compatible with everything that we do in Illustrator. Okay, so the reason why I did that was because it's going to give you some more interesting options when you recombine your objects and make the new babies. So what this does is it turned this, instead of being a simple star shape with a fill and a stroke, it's now a group of shapes. So if you look here, it's converted it into a group. I can flip open the group, and the stroke became its own little shape, and then the fill with the gradient is a separate shape now. So if I can use my direct selection tool now, click outside to deselect, and if I zoom way in and I click right in the middle of the stroke, what used to be the stroke is now its own little shape. That's called a compound path. And you see it's no longer a stroke, it's a filled shape. So what's cool is I can move it around as its own little shape and create interesting offsets. I'm going to undo that though. You can also use your direct selection tool to click on an individual point, click and release, and then drag to another way to create a variable width on your stroke in an interesting way. But I'm going to undo that for now and leave it as is. And then the fact that this is an outline stroke is going to give me some more interesting options that I can play with later on when they make the babies. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break. For those of you who are still with me now, I'm going to save this.
Okay.
And when we come back in 10 minutes, it's 7:40. Let's come back at 7:50. And then you'll see the reproduction happen. And we'll look at methods of reproduction. Exciting stuff. You don't want to miss it. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video here.